All right. How's everybody doing on this Saturday morning? I hope everybody's doing okay. My name is 12 Gauge, and this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. You know, I hope that everybody's enjoying the topics that I've been choosing lately. You know, they've been all the way around the spectrum pretty much. And some of these I've done before, but there's been updates on them. So I always like to keep the updates going and let you guys know exactly what's going on. Such is the case for the Ellen Greenberg case. I did this case a while back, and if you haven't heard about the updates on the case, I want to let you guys know the updates. And I want to kind of go back in time and show you a little bit about the situations that have went on with this case so that you'll be acclimated. So if you hear anything in the future, you'll understand exactly what people are talking about. So without further ado, let me change the background. They're cheering for 12 Gauge. You see that? Isn't that cool? I like this one. Ellen Greenberg. She was a school teacher, and she was murdered in her apartment. And I'm not going to ruin it for you, but there's been a lot of conspiracy with this case. And most of it has been heartbreaking because if you don't understand the case, you understand that her parents have tried to get her justice, tried to get the correct cause of death on the medical examiner's report. And, it's just terrible. So let's get into this. Let's start with this one right here.
Do you believe that there was strangulation?
Yes.
To medical certainty?
To reasonable degree of medical certainty, she was strangled. Yeah. I would testify in the court of law. I've said it in my reports.
Do you think there's any signs of abuse before the death?
I'm concerned about that, yes. And the reason I'm concerned about that is the bruises to the wrists, obviously, but there's extensive bruises to the lower legs. What is that about? Where does she get that? She's not a kickboxer. She's not in karate that I know of. She looks like a typical nice girl, very feminine looking. How'd she get those bruises down there?
And Brian Enton joins me live now with this remarkable story that he has doggedly pursued. Were you surprised by these findings? I mean, this pathologist really thinks that this was staged.
I was surprised by what he has uncovered. He's been working the case for 10 years, Ashley. He says it is staged, that this whole scene was staged, and that he has the evidence to prove it, that perhaps Ellen Greenberg didn't even die from the stab wounds. This is a highly respected forensic pathologist. He does autopsies 4 different counties here in Pennsylvania, was hired by the Greenbergs. He's done 14,000 autopsies overall. He says he has never seen anything like what happened to Ellen Greenberg and all of this craziness that has gone on for the last 14 years. Listen to what he says about it being staged.
When I look at the scene, first thing I notice when I look at it, and I think synthetically, is, oh my goodness, this scene is staged. How do I know it's staged? Because I see her back up against the cabinets in the kitchen. Her arms are down by her side. The left hand is holding onto a towel. There's no blood on the towel. There's no blood on her hand. There's blood to the back of her left hand. To the right are her glasses. Now, obviously, she's not sitting there stabbing herself and then wiping herself with the towel. Why does she have a towel there? And there's no blood on the base of the left hand. She didn't use her left hand, obviously, to stab herself. And there's a towel in there. Why would she have a towel in her hand if she's going to be stabbing herself? And there's no blood in it. Well, she didn't. Somebody else put it there. It's staged.
He says the clean towel, Ashley, doesn't make any sense. He believes it came from the bathroom. He's frustrated that there was no luminol testing done. There was no testing by police done in the bathroom.
Okay, so there was no luminol testing. There was no testing in the bathroom by police, and that could be infuriating, because without that type of testing, it's difficult to even know that there could have been a perpetrator's DNA or fingerprints or footprints or anything like that.
Bathroom. He showed me photos in the bathroom. All of her stuff was packed up. Her makeup bag was packed up. Her cell phone was sitting right on top of her bag. He believes perhaps she was packing up to leave when all of this went down. He showed me the sink, by the way, the kitchen sink. In the sink, there was a pot scrubber and there was a sponge and there were 2 knives. None of that was tested, he said. So he's frustrated by the whole thing.
I'm frustrated, but I'm angry. I'm just angry at the sheer stupidity and the laziness or whatever else was afoot here. The doctor was really great in terms of demonstrating how absolutely asinine a finding of suicide was. What did he say?
Yeah, I mean, you call it asinine, and now, the big civil case that was supposed to happen in the courthouse behind me this week, the city of Philadelphia settled. They settled, and let's not forget, the medical examiner who did the autopsy has now said it was not a suicide. So everybody seems to be agreeing in that way at this point. But this is the way he explained it in terms of all those stab wounds, 20 stab wounds to the front of the back of the body.
If you're going to call this a suicide, not a homicide, that somehow she stands up or leans over, stabbing myself. Oh, I get to get blood drops down there. Blood drops, get down there. Oh, not my hand, sorry. I used the left hand. Shouldn't have done that. Just the right. Blood drops. And then she falls to the ground. She's on it and everything else. Boot turns to the side. Oh, excuse me. Let me stab myself again and drop the blood on the side. Does that make any sense? No, of course not. Right? But that's what you're suggesting. I mean, you're not suggesting it. So there's blood drops there. They're coming straight down too. And there's hair here. I mean, why the heck's there hair in between here? What's that from? Now, what happens is when you get hair like this, sometimes the person is defending themselves and literally the victim actually pulls their hair out. But the other times, the assailant is pulling the hair out. Either way.
This is interesting stuff right here. Like, it never made sense to me that she would have done something to herself. But, it's also interesting how he's demonstrating this stuff.
You got hair here in the middle. Does that make any sense to anybody? Of course not.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com.
So what do y'all think about that so far? I know that y'all probably been highly invested in this case because it's a strange one for sure. And I hate the fact that her parents have had to deal with this insanity for so many years. And here's the next video. Let me know what you think.
We have new developments in the Ellen Greenberg case. Today, a judge in a civil suit ruled that there is enough evidence to go to trial. Now, Greenberg's family sued several Philadelphia city officials, claiming that the investigation into the 27-year-old's death caused them emotional distress. The Manayunk teacher was found dead in 2011 from multiple stab wounds. Her death ruled a suicide.
Today is 15 years that Sandy and Josh Greenberg have been waiting to have the opportunity to go to court. This case is intentional infliction of emotional distress by the defendants on Sandy and Josh for covering up the homicide of their daughter as a suicide.
So the medical examiner's report said Greenberg was stabbed in the head, the neck, and the chest. Her death was first ruled a suicide, then changed to a homicide, and then back to a suicide. The family's attorney, Joe Pedraza, says the defense could not give a solid explanation for the manner of death.
So when there was no support for suicide, obviously the inference is, well, then why is it being called a suicide? There must be other reasons. And we believe part of that reason is misconduct and just terrible investigative acts by the Philadelphia Police Department
So this is one of two cases that's playing out in court. The first was filed in 2019 and seeks to have Ellen's manner of death changed from suicide back to homicide or undetermined. It's now before the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. Now, as for this case, jury selection begins Monday at 9 a.m. We also reached out to the city and the police department. They said they could not comment on pending litigation, but the trial.
She looked like her mama and her dad. She had her mom and dad's look. That is, obviously, right? Come on, 12 gauge. Get with the picture here. I'm cleaning my lens because it's looking a little fuzzy up there. How the heck is everybody doing? Are y'all awake yet or what? The chat's looking mighty slow right now. I don't know if it's because you're waking up. I don't know if it's because it's Saturday. I don't know what's going on, but let's get this chat flowing. Let's get some folks up in here. Let's get some peeps up in here. Let's get people up in here wanting to hear about this case. And this is the one I'm about to do right here is the one that I did. Hold on. So you're going to see two 12 gauges on the screen, okay? So don't freak out, all right? Don't freak out. Yeah, we all need a little more coffee. It's one of those Saturday mornings. It's cold. We want some coffee and all this good stuff. Two 12 gauges, right? So the 12 gauge right here is the one that's doing the talking. That one's going to narrate that one. And look at Nancy's face that I paused it on. So let's get it going. Let's get it going, everyone. Let's go. Wakey, wakey. Here we go. And this, okay? Let's listen to what happens.
Article long ago about the ruling, the suicide ruling. I believe I immediately called you. Because how can anyone, stab themselves 20 times that we know of? And we also know about the phenomena of overlapping stab wounds where someone is stabbed in the same spot. We're dealing with that with Brian Kohberger's case right now. So there may be more stab wounds, but I'm going to go with 20. I'm going to go with 20. How can you stab yourself 20 times? And I had to write these down in preparation for talking with you this morning, Joe Scott Morgan, when at least three of the stab wounds could be deadly. For instance, stab wound E, as in elephant.
Y'all pay attention to what Nancy's about to say because this is really important. And I think that people miss things like this because they're not really understanding what she's saying. But listen to what she said as far as the stab wounds. Because any other crime that you will be prevalent to in the future, you will understand what she's talking about. Because these stab wounds are important. They're a part of the investigation that you can understand exactly what happened during that situation and what did not happen, because this is where the speculatory things run rampant. This is where people go with, well, this has happened and this couldn't have happened and blah, blah, blah. No, when it comes to stab wounds, they're very specific. They're very, very specific. So pay attention here.
Certainly fatal. Stab wound H, happy, fatal. Stab wound number 2, very likely fatal. Stab wound K had to be inflicted with a serrated abrasion. But I find that the wounds are diametrically opposed to each other regarding trajectory path. In other words, there are vertical stab wounds, there are horizontal stab wounds, there are oblique stab wounds. One that bothers me the most, actually two, is the one basically on top of the head. How do you attack yourself on top of your head? And the
Exactly, Nancy. How do you stab yourself on the top of the head? Right here. Why would you stab yourself on the top of the head? And as we go along, you're going to see the autopsy reports. You're going to see where the level of stab wounds were. You're going to see the knife. You're going to see a lot of stuff. This is a long, drawn out live. This is one of my favorites, I think, because I was able to show the autopsy, read the autopsy, give you the overall effects of this crime. Thank you very much. This is my 12 gauge hat. See, this is gauge. It said 12, but it got cut off somehow. But my favorite part right here is the bullets on the brim. So yeah, why don't you go check out the merchandise? Go get you one. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you for being here. Leslie and Billy, thank you for being here. You can get some of that energy. You know how I get mine? I usually work out and drink a lot of water. That kind of flushes everything out. I'm not always energetic like this. Sometimes I'm sipping coffee like it's going out of style. Aquarius, get you some more coffee. Get that blood pumping. Do some jumping jacks in place, whatever it takes. Anyways, 12, calm down a little bit. Let's get this going.
Wound where her dura of her spine is cut. How do you do that to the back of your neck? And then last and most importantly, some of the wounds were inflicted post-mortem, after death. Her heart was not beating. How could she keep?
Okay, how could you keep stabbing yourself if you're dead? I think that's what Lower 12 is going to say here in a second. Let me let him speak.
Stabbing herself. I mean, how?
The thing about stab wounds, Nancy, is that every time an edged weapon is introduced into somebody's body, a pain center fires. So over and over again, you mentioned the number 20. So, and even for our listeners that are following this. Okay, it says, here's the autopsy. It says 20 stab wounds to the chest, abdomen, and back of the neck. There's an incision wound on the scalp, 10 stab wounds to the back of the neck, ranging from 0.03 centimeter to 8 centimeters deep. One of the neck wounds cut through the spinal cord, multiple bruises in various stages of healing. So there's 20 stab wounds just in the abdomen, the chest, and the back of the neck. You're telling me that somebody's going to sit there and stab themselves in the back of the neck? I want you to, whatever you're doing right now, this lady was right-handed. So if you're, right-handed, or take your dominant hand and try to, stab yourself, think of stabbing yourself 10 times with one of those kitchen knives that we saw, where it's ranging deep enough to cut through the spinal cord. That is pretty deep. So you have to ask yourself, how did this happen? How did this happen? They're saying a suicide, but is this possible? Case, and many have for now, these many years. You can identify with just a paper cut, perhaps at home, and how painful that is. If you can imagine a serrated edge, and that's what we're talking about, just like a steak knife, okay? And it's roughly a 5-inch blade. You have to do the conversion from metric, roughly a 5-inch blade. You've got this running along the surface. So let's just take, for instance, Morgan right now. If you just slow it down for me. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. One of the very curious things, Nancy, is the fact that you have a blade that is entering the chest, and there's a couple of these along the way where you're talking about the blade is going from right to left, then from left to right. And here's one of the really curious things. There's one of these injuries that actually the trajectory takes it upward like that, okay, as opposed to
which one
another
is that?
deflection.
Which one is that?
I'd have to refer back to my notes at this point in time, Nancy. But if you go to H, for instance, it's 4 centimeters deep. And okay, look at that knife right there. That's
with the knife that was used to do all this damage. Cut deep enough into her back to go into the spinal column, go into her head, through the skull. Jesus, I hate to even talk like this, but it is what it is. 4-inch knife. So that gives you kind of a overview of what a little knife like that can do to a person. I don't know why people have that mentality that it takes a freaking machete to kill somebody. No, it can just take, this looks like a steak knife.
And you're talking about from left to right. How
If you look at this knife, he said it's 5 inches long from tip to right here. 5 inches long. So this, if you're talking about 3 to 8 centimeters, I would say it'd be about, I don't have a tape measure and I'm not saying this is accurate, but at least to right here would be the incision. Or maybe even all the way here. This looks like at least a couple of inches though. This looks about 1, 2, about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this looks about 3 inches right here. But I could be wrong. I don't have a tape measure. But here's one right here. Here's the centimeter. He said 3 to 8 inches. Okay. Boop! 12 gauge. Get it together. Okay, here we go. 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, 3 centimeter, 4 centimeter, 5 centimeter, 6. Okay, look how deep 8 centimeters is. That is pretty damn deep. So 3 centimeters is right here. Here's 8 centimeters right here. So that's pretty damn deep. To be stabbing yourself in the back of the head 10 times, that is pretty damn deep, don't y'all think? There's no way that, in my mind, somebody could do that. Yes, you're right, Jeff. It's an inches on the bottom, the centimeters are on top. The reason I was talking about the centimeters is because he said it went in 8 centimeters, so I guess that would be a little more than, it looks like 4 inches, 4.5, maybe. Yeah, 4.5 inches is 8 centimeters, something. I don't know. Don't get me to lying. I'm showing my ignorance here as far as reading a tape measure. Here we go. I know. I just figured that out. Sorry, guys.
However, if you go to,
Wow.
let's see, which one was it? I had it right here.
Wait,
Sorry.
but I've got to ask you a very fundamental question. And this
Yeah,
is
sure.
from a lawyer, not a medical professional. Josh Sandy, Ellen's right-handed, correct?
Ellen was right-handed.
Yeah, we've asked that before. Yeah.
Okay, are we sure? Because I've been told she's right-handed.
Yes.
Are we sure Ellen was right-handed?
Yes. I
Okay,
played
that's all I
softball
needed
with
to
her.
know. You sure did. You sure did. Jessica Morgan, some of the wounds are left to right, which I completely understand if she's right-handed. But how do you do, in addition to all the steps to the back and to the top of the head and to the back of your neck?
Yep.
How do you stab yourself if you're right-handed from right to left?
It's almost empirically impossible to do this, Nancy, because you're talking about a readjustment of the blade on the plane that it's on. So you have to spin the knife in a particular direction in order to achieve this. And that's why I go back to this idea of the pain centers that are firing. So in the midst of all of this so-called frenzy that would have.
So he's talking about having to spin the knife to get that kind of dynamic going on. So all this is going on while you're stabbing yourself. I mean, I could see yourself, not saying that suicide could not possibly happen, but there's just a lot of evidentiary areas where it doesn't make sense with a suicide. But as he's saying, you'd have to spin the knife in order to get that going on. So
come along with a suicidal self-inflicted stab wound, you're having to readjust the knife backwards. You would invert the knife and then pull it back to the original orientation. In addition to that, and we're talking about now the injuries that are posterior on the backside. I don't know how.
Okay, wait. I
would
think I
accomplish
just figured
that.
out what you were saying. You know what?
Okay, there's the crime scene. There's part of it. As you can see, there's blood splatter, and this looks like she was trying to get up. Like maybe that might be a handprint and it was a smear. This might be some fingers. I don't know. This is a big puddle of blood though, right here. And here's some more blood splatter. The thing that intrigues me about blood splatter, I don't know if y'all watched the Dexter series on Netflix, but he's a blood splatter expert in there. And he was explaining this the other day. And I know it's a series and I know it's a movie or whatever, but they try to be as accurate as possible because they have a lot of people trying to debunk them. So they say that, when it's blood splatter and it's close by, the blood splatter is kind of like sprayed at a certain direction that the stab is happening. So if the person was right here and they were standing up and they got stabbed from this way, there'd be a squirt possibly, or it'd be down. Whichever direction the knife went in and came out, that's the direction the blood would splatter. And especially if they took the knife and slung it like that, then you would see a spray of blood go across this. But we're not even certain that this is where it happened. I don't understand why there's so little blood, just like Nancy said. But also what I came to understand in another series that I was watching on the OJ trial, he was talking about, and it's not splatter, it's spatter. I've been corrected on that, so I'm correcting that. Anyways, he was saying like whenever somebody's walking, the head of the blood sprays in front. So if the blood is from the back, then the tail would be toward the back. So it tells you the direction of the movement based on the tail of the blood. So I thought that was interesting. I learned that the other day on the OJ presentation that I did on here. Any blood spatter experts in the chat? Just a little puddle right here with 20 stab wounds to the chest and the abdomen. Was this lady pregnant? Was the individual trying to get rid of the... No, I'm just stretching there. I don't want to do that.
You're going to have to work on your testimony, Joe Scott, because if it took me that long to figure it out. I think what you're saying was, let's pretend I've got the knife. To get those serrations on her body, she'd have to take it she'd have to take the knife and turn it around and commit the next stab.
Yes.
And that is because we see which side of the knife is cutting her. So she'd have to, okay, here's an example. You know how there is the American and the European mode of cutting your meat? Europeans allegedly hold the knife and the fork, and they never swap. The American style is you swap, you cut the knife, you cut the meat with your right hand, you put down the knife, you take the fork out of your left hand and put the meat to your mouth. You swap back and forth, all right?
Correct.
That's what you're saying would have to happen here for these serrations to be performed by Ellen. She'd have to turn the knife around and then continue stabbing herself. That did not happen. And again, there is no person of interest. There is no suspect. All there is a big... Okay. So if she's stabbing herself with this knife, as most of you who are true crime advocates and haciendos, you're very involved in true crime and hearing about it and things of that nature. You have to understand that when you're stabbing yourself with a knife,
at one point, this is going to become very bloody. And your hand's going to slip. And there's a potential chance that you could slice your hand on this part of the knife, or even this part, or even poke yourself with it. I don't know if you've ever stabbed. I got this 12 gauge. I have a question in the chat. Let me address that first, and then let me say what I'm going to say. Rondi has a question. She says, I wonder if she had any wounds on her hands. That's an interesting question. That I don't know if that's addressed further on, but that's an interesting question to understand. I mean, that would show defensive wounds, right? Jeff said when the 911 caller says, "Oh my God, she stabbed herself in the heart," that sounds like what someone that earlier was saying for heart might say. Was aiming for her heart might say. Okay. What I was gonna say in this aspect is, I lost my train of thought. Let me let you something, but most of the time the knives that they use have a little guard right here on both sides, so that if you're stabbing, your hand stops right there and it doesn't go all the way to the blade. Okay, that's what I was gonna ask you guys. Have any of you ever butchered a hog, or cut meat for a living, or anything like that? Have you ever accidentally stabbed yourself with the knife, like as you're cutting into something, or you're processing something? I mean, is it that easy to do, or do the gloves really keep you from cutting yourself? I mean, this is the question I have for you guys, because I've never really used a knife to that extreme. I've never processed anything. I've never, the only thing I cut is steak. So I've never cut myself, cutting a piece of steak, no matter how big it was. But have any of you ever done that before? If so, share your thoughts in the feelings. Good grief. In the chat box. My bad. Jeff says on Banfield, they show a generic body image with circled marking wound marks. Don't see any on the hands. Okay. Well, I'm going to. But this doesn't look like there's any blood in this area, so the individual obviously had a good grip on it. It would be interesting to know if she had any kind of what kind of bruises she may have had on her hand. Was there any bruising on the fingers? Was there any bruising on the inside right here, where if she hit a bone, the knife would have stopped? And like they were saying, she would have to turn it to bring it out, because if it sticks in there, you have to turn it to unlodge it. It's not like the movies where they're good, clean,
Big stinking mess, because this case was not investigated. Tom Brennan joining me.
Can I please add one more thing?
What?
Okay.
Could I stop you? No.
Yeah, sure you could. But one of the biggest faux pas here relative to this report, and you're breaking a norm here with this autopsy report. Nowhere in this autopsy report
she was 27.
are the length of Ellen's arms mentioned. And when you're talking about, and I've been involved in over 7,000 autopsies, Nancy, and anytime you're talking about knife wounds and you're talking about self-inflicted event, you have to measure the arm length to see if this is even possible for this to occur. This has never occurred in this autopsy. We've talked about this in the past. And so I cannot understand why in the world they would not have taken the time to do
right there, she has her hand clenched. I'm not saying that this was the time, so don't get all crazy on me. But she has her hand clenched. So imagine if she killed herself, she would have had that knife in this hand. Look how long her arm is, right? Could she have went back over her head stabbed herself in the neck 10 times, an abrasion right here on the back of her head, and then stabbed herself in the chest 20 times, and then stuck the knife in after she was already dead. You tell me that's possible? If you tell me that's possible, then you're a used car salesman for real.
Schultz. Why in the world they would not?
Joe Scott, I thought you were
Yeah.
waxing philosophic again on the
No.
art of a medical examination, but I've never heard that mentioned before. The length
Yeah.
of her arms were not
Yeah.
taken into consideration, or whether she was right-handed or left-handed. Hold on, hold your thought. Tom Brennan joining me, private eye consultant for the Greenberg family. He's been on it from the beginning. Tom Brennan, in a nutshell, what happened? Every time we get together and talk about this case, I learn something new, like Joe Scott just describing the length of her arms was not taken into account, and that is critical. Benet Nauer came up with the fact that at least 3 of these wounds, along with Dr. Michelle Dupree, were fatal, but yet she kept stabbing herself. In addition to the impossibility of killing yourself over 20 stab wounds, if 3 of them were fatal and many committed post-mortem. My question to you, Tom Brennan, thank you for staying on the case, but the question is, what happened in between the medical examiner naming this a homicide and then suddenly going, oh yeah, scratchy, I've now decided it's a suicide. What happened in the interim, Tom Brennan?
Well, what you have to understand, there were 2 meetings, unrecorded meetings, okay, between the medical examiner and the police. And one meeting was with a member of the district attorney's office, the police, and the Dr. Galino and Dr. Osborne. Okay, and at that meeting, that's when Dr. Osborne decided he was going to change his findings from homicide to suicide. Okay.
Okay, hold on. John Lucy joining me from penlive.com. Did I just hear John Lucy, Tom Brennan, state that after the homicide ruling, the medical examiner met with law enforcement and suddenly changed his mind? Did I hear that?
Yes, you did. And the most powerful thing that has come out due to the Greenberg family's persistence on this case is they have been able to get those medical examiner officials under oath in sworn depositions in which both Osborne and Galino spelled out the fact that these meetings occurred. So it's on the record under sworn deposition that these meetings occurred. And in addition to the U.S., the PA Supreme Court case challenging the cause of death ruling, there's another civil action by the Greenbergs alleging a cover-up among the detectives and the ME's office in Philadelphia. And they are now in the process of moving forward with depositions in that case, which is finally going to get some of the detectives under oath so they can be.
So what makes it hard to believe that this was not a homicide? What makes it so hard to believe that? Because what makes you believe this was a suicide? Do you believe that possibly she stabbed herself or started stabbing herself and then the guy came in and finished her off after she was already dead? I mean, because I'm trying to understand other people's mindset whenever they say certain things instead of reacting and saying, well, there's no way that could happen. I'm trying to understand it. Even though I might not agree with it, I'm still trying to understand it. So how could this woman have been stabbed this many times and it not be, because it was originally based a homicide. So Then they turned it around and said, no, it was a suicide. What I'm asking is, how do you believe in your head that it was a suicide based on what you've been told? Take Nancy Grace out of it. Take the person who's delivering the message. Take all your biases toward the people that are discussing this case and just go with the case. What has been stated about the case? If you take your bias about Nancy Grace out of there because you might not like her, you might not like any of the people on our panel, take all that out of your head if you can do this. And just go with the factual information we've been told. How does that replicate into a suicide in your brain? I'm open to listen to different perspectives. I really am. Because like I say all the time, your opinion is valid in this chat and we agree to disagree. And I'm not trying to be one of those to say there's no way that could have happened. My way is the only way. No, that's not what I'm doing. But I want to know, when you make a comment and you make a blanket statement, does that equate to the end result? You get what I'm saying? Does that equate to the end result? We know that she was stabbed 20 times in the chest, in the abdomen, in the front part of her body. There was also 10 stabs to the back of her neck and 1 gash in her head. And there was some postmortem injuries. So this means that she was already dead when this happened. Okay, 12 gauge, I got this for a second. Let me ask you guys in chat, because this is a live chat. This that I'm going over with the past live that I did. Let me ask you guys a question. Based on what you know about how women commit suicide, how many times do you hear women committing suicide by stabbing themselves? Research it. Google it, chat, GBT it, whatever. And then put that information into what you've been told. Woman stabbed 20 times in all those different areas. Does that still make sense in your mind? If it does, it does. Like I said in there, whatever you think is your opinion. I mean, that's what it should be, But during this chat, I was having some people challenge me. And that's why I was kind of getting a little irate at it. But, it is what it is. I'm updating the case right now because of the new findings in the beginning. I'm going over this part so that people understand what the case is about. And Rondi has a statement. She says, I'm wondering if the boyfriend did it. Wouldn't he know this couldn't be a suicide because it's overkill, isn't it? I would think so. And some bruising. So that's all I'm saying, I'm saying that if you're going to make a statement, I want to be able to understand it rather than try to debate you on your statement, because I'm not a debater. I'm not one of those people that's going to stand up here and debate. I want to meet you halfway, and I want to say, well, let me see how this makes sense in their eyes. That's all I've ever said about any case. You know what I mean? And that's what I hope that you understand, because I want to meet you halfway, because I want to be able to see your position on it, other than you're right, I'm wrong type thing. I don't want to get into all that. So let me see what you are saying before I continue on. Rondi says, but the alibi is suspect. I like Nancy, though. I do think she dramatizes and things she said. That's because she's a prosecuting attorney. That's what they do. Exactly. A Southern prosecuting attorney. Talk about more drama. Exactly. I would like to know if the police saw him on a camera, because if they did, that means somebody else did it and maybe he put them up to it. All the stables so deep sounds like crime of passion. Exactly. She wouldn't have to herself if she hadn't displeased him. What do you mean by displeased him, Twiz? What do you mean by that? I've heard you type that twice now. Displeased him how? I believe she was stabbed in the front of her body first, and then when she slumped over and started to fall, that's when whoever was stabbing her got her in the top of the head and back up. See, that makes logical sense to me. Also, the backstabs, as I was looking into this the other night, before I was putting this stuff together, if she was standing over the kitchen sink or she was preparing dinner, I think that's what they say later on, is that she was standing over the sink and whoever did this surprised her. So they could have started stabbing her from the back. First, she turned around to fling, you know what I'm saying? Like in defense mode type stuff. And then the frontal stabbing start. I don't know if that makes sense at all or not, but it is what it is. Let's go. I want to continue. Let me fast forward a little bit because I talk long-winded here. Just want it to make sense to meet you halfway, because there's a lot of statements that are made and people make them without any kind of follow-through, and that is just, it starts rumors that way. Women usually take pills or carbon monoxide in the car. They usually don't shoot themselves or stab themselves, make a bloody scene. I've heard that too. I've heard that women don't want to put the burden on somebody else cleaning up after them once they commit suicide. And I've heard that more than once. Yeah, sarcasm over text has gotten me in a lot of trouble for being a smart person. I don't learn. Well, there's nothing wrong in this chat. You know that. You've been in here for a while. So, whatever you say, I just want to meet you halfway. There's a lot of different ways to do that. I thought you were being sarcastic at first, and I was like, eh. But the kind of lock, like a hotel lock, do you have the picture of it? Yes, they showed that in the very beginning more than once. And I think him kicking the door in puts a lot of suspect with the first person who was there. Occam's razor, as we talked about, what is the most logical explanation? That's why whenever they say the boyfriend, the fiance, the ex-husband, the ex-lover, whoever, that's why they're always viewed as the potential suspect first and got to be cleared, because who's the closest to the person that was murdered? And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, right. It was a hook lock. Let me see if I can find it right quick, and then we'll get back to the video. It's also whenever they're interviewing the person closest to the crime, what would be the motive for that to occur? You know what I mean? Like he said he went to the gym. Was that his alibi? Was somebody else able to confirm that alibi? Let me show you the lock or the latch. There's one that I found really quickly. So this was the latch, okay? So look at that latch right there. I don't know if you've ever locked yourself out of a hotel room, or you've had somebody in the hotel room while you went off and they locked that. A lot of times those things are pretty damn secure. I just got off vacation and I had some kids in the room that would lock me out like that every time I left the room. So, I tried to open that, like open it a little bit and push the little ball area to the end to, unlock it without them getting up and doing that. And it's hard to do. It's difficult to do unless you're very proficient at breaking into doors like that. I could never do it. So I'd shut the door and beat on the door, and then they finally get up and unlatch it. But so the door was latched like that. He stated that the door was latched like that. How do we know unless the door was kicked in and to lock it out of the wall? Yeah, I mean, we don't know. We don't know. Yeah, I got locked out. They did it on purpose. Hey, SRB, how are you doing? Thank you for being here. Who works out for 30 minutes? Well, no comment. And why would she kick the door in if it was locked instead of try to call her or maybe thought she fell asleep? How would he immediately? That's a good question. Like he went to the gym and then he returned. You'd think since he'd been in that area or been in that room, he would have had the door key. Yeah, you're locking 12G out. You're right. You would think that he would have the door key, or at least. So here's the thing: if we're looking at logic, right? We're looking at logic because that's how I look at things on this channel. We're looking at logic. How was this door locked like this? If there was somebody that came in and did this, and then they left and locked the door behind them like this? Was there another? That's what's confusing to me. Is like this door was locked and latched from the inside because he couldn't get in. He couldn't get in. The boyfriend, after he worked out, he couldn't get back into the room. How could he have latched that behind him? You get what I'm saying? Like they supposedly went in. She started, as Rondi said, cutting up some fruit and stuff, and he went to go work out. He works out for 30 minutes. It's sus, really. He didn't have to lock and latch. What do you mean? Well, as this goes on, I think I say that the door latch was broken. Like they showed that they could have gotten out of. Did they climb out the window? How would the killer have gotten out of that room? And I think that's why it's so imperative, because you've heard other cases where the door had been shut behind and either locked or jammed where somebody couldn't get in. How did they get out of that door, closing it and locking it to the point where somebody had to break in order to get into that door? Does that make sense at all? Because we've heard in other cases that that's happened. He would have called her phone or text her and be like, open the freaking door and try to get a different way instead of kicking the door in. You're right. But there's no getting in. There's no getting in these little things unless you bust the door down. No, this isn't a picture from the crime scene. This is just the latch that I found. If it was already broken, could he have had latched it on his way out? That's a good point. There's no evidence he kicked in the door, is there? Well, she stated, hold on a second, she locked him out, got pissed and kicked the door and then stabbed her. Let me rewind this a little bit so that you can see exactly what was said. Hold on, let me see if I can find the door. It's at the very beginning. Right here where he does the 911 call. Let me let you hear the 911 call. So we're at 2539. So somebody write that down in the chat. Let me let you hear the 911 call. 2539. Here's the 911 call for you guys. Okay. If I could ever clone myself. There he is. What's up, 12? Hold on. Let me unshare that and reshare the. Man, bro, you got a hell of a tan going on. 2539. Okay, here we go.
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. Like she's not responding.
Okay, is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down. I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So
okay, look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
So he said right there, he kicked the door in. And there's the latch of their, that was supposedly what it looked like right there. So what do y'all think? I mean, there's a lot. See, there's the door that supposedly it looked just like their apartment. So their apartment was very generic, I guess. It kind of looks like a hotel room. But that latch would have been hard to get into unless you did bust this area down. You put your shoulder to this area and you go boom and keep doing it until you knock it open. But how did nobody hear that? How would nobody have heard that? You get what I'm saying? He waited 30 minutes to break the door down. No chance. Yeah, that's what I stated at the very beginning. He didn't sound like he was out of breath. He didn't sound like he was too interested in getting help. The doors are hard to get into, especially with that deadbolt. Okay, well, that's what I'm trying to say is this was a homicide. This was not suicide. Was there someone with him when he supposedly broke in? Good question. Good question. Yeah, there's a real deadbolt down at the bottom. So he would have had a key to that, but he wouldn't have been able to get into the home or into that room with that latch. On the door handle, there's a real deadbolt. Wasn't that locked? Well, he possibly could have had a key to that. No, he's never sarcastic. The fact of the matter is I can never tell anymore. So sometimes I'm like, what? So what was it again? 2538? 2548? So that's looking at that door latch right there. I mean, excuse me, what they're saying is the door was locked and it was latched. So how could he have left the room? I mean, she could have latched the door behind him. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. But like Rondi was saying, how do we know if the door was really latched? Well, do you think he opened the door, latched the door, and then like broke it to make it look like he kicked it in? Is that what you were saying? Because I'm trying to figure it out, what you meant by that. Where are we at? Let me scroll up here. 2539. Okay. Yeah, so I mean there's a door that kind of looks like the door they were talking about. I feel so bad for her family. Let's continue this video.
Which is finally going to get some of the detectives under oath so they can be questioned about what happened at that crime scene on the night of her death.
Please join us on our mission to find missing people, especially children, to solve unsolved homicides. If you're on the go, catch us on your favorite podcast app where you can get all of our content where we, in our own way, seek justice.
What happened to beloved Philly teacher Ellen Greenberg? The Pennsylvania Supreme Court agrees to review the case amidst a controversial ruling.
Controversial, well, that's certainly one way to put it. Can we just all agree? And if anybody on the panel disagrees, jump in. How many times do I have to tell you we're not having high tea at Windsor Castle with Charles and Camilla? Jump in. Number one, no fingerprints were taken on the knife. Number two, no forensic tests were done on the door. Was it really latched? Was it broken into? What really happened? Was there any evidence taken regarding fingerprints on the rest of the cabinets? Was luminol ever used? Why was her laptop and her cell phone taken from the apartment? Why was the cleaning crew called in to clean the apartment before it could be fully processed? There are so many questions.
See, these people have insight that we would take as being, okay, well, they know what they're talking about because they've gotten the paperwork. We don't have the paperwork in front of us. So when she said, why was the cleaning crew called in before it was properly investigated? That's a hell of a question right there. And if that is true, I'm not saying it is, or I'm not saying it's not, what made them call the cleaning crew? Yeah, good question. I mean, you're asking some awesome questions. You know. Yeah, he sounded mad. Watched. Cover up. So, do you believe that somebody can clean up a crime scene quickly? I mean, be realistic here. We're not talking about movie type of cleanups. We're talking about running in there. He called 911. So you're telling me if he was the killer, he cleaned it up and they didn't do any kind of test to see if there was a cleanup? I mean, I'm not saying that all police departments or all crime investigation personnel are thorough with their jobs or not. Okay, we get it. Hey, Chad. Hey, Texas, how you doing, buddy? Do y'all think that this was a cover-up? I mean, because that seems to be the status quo for everything these days. Oh, it's a cover-up. Police meant to cover this up. You know, there's a difference, but learn the wording. If you mean that the police messed it up, that's one thing. Messed it up and covered it up are two different meanings. So learn the wording. Like if you're going to say the police made a terrible investigation job, I could be behind that. I could get behind that. But just to make a blanket statement like that, well, the police covered it up. There's no reason why they would cover it up. Like, what would be the reasoning behind that? What would be the reason that they would cover this up? Not thorough, but that would be something that you'd look into, I would believe, you know. Scott, I see what you did there. But I would say that, you would be able to see if there was any bleach used to clean it up. If there was any kind of smears, you know, I think he cleaned himself off. What? Very rushed. Yeah, he didn't have 8 hours. So I don't think it took him 8 hours to clean this up if it was him.
It's important in my mind. What happened in that closed door meeting? Medical examiner and members of law enforcement who ruled it suicide on the scene before any investigation. What happened in that meeting? Joining me an all-star panel to make sense of what we know right now. But first, more of the 911 call. And remember, no one has been named a person of interest. No one has been named a suspect. But I can tell you this was not a suicide. Why has this case been suppressed? What is it that law enforcement, I'm talking about the district attorney's office, I'm talking about, yes, I'm saying it, the attorney general's office. Why don't they want this case investigated? What's the problem? Listen to this.
Okay, do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay, I can tell you what to do, okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her.
Oh, God.
Hello?
Yeah, hi, okay.
You willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off. Okay? Kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir.
Okay, I'm trying not. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God. She stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell a knife. Oh, no. Her knife's sticking out.
What?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
She stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Right
So
there.
many things are
I don't
jumping
know
out
if
at
she
me from
fell
that
on it.
911.
I don't know if she fell on it. How could you fall on a little steak knife like that? That is some movie stuff right there. You see that in the Asian, Japanese samurai swords. You fall on it to kill yourself. That is some movie stuff. Oh, I'm not saying that I think that she committed suicide. I'm saying it was a homicide. I'm not on the part that they covered up the homicide or trying to say that it was a suicide. I believe that the medical examiner got it wrong. I definitely believe it was a homicide. I agree with you. Yeah. Don't take my comments wrong. I'm not saying that this was a suicide. This is definitely a homicide. Stuff right there. And the fact that he's like, what aggravates me, and I'm gonna vent right quick. What aggravates me is the 911 operators. They annoy the crap out of me, especially when they play the 911 tapes. And I know that they're trying to just keep the person calm. But at a particular point, why are you asking so many freaking questions? What, when, where, how? Is she this? Is she that? What did you do? Da 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 da. So if a person is hysterical, telling her, look, I'm over here. But that guy wasn't hysterical. He seemed so freaking calm, did he not? I'm going to shut myself up because I get on my nerves when I get on that. Here we go.
Where the medical examiner suddenly had some sort of an epiphany and named the multiple stabbing a suicide.
Based on the deposition of Galino and Osborne, there were detectives who were handling the case who were pressing their own version of evidence of suicide. And the things that are named in the deposition as their evidence is the lack of defensive wounds on her hands. In other words, If she was being stabbed by an assailant, you raise your hands and you have stab wounds on the hands. That was one. And the second thing that was mentioned by those.
They need to stop interjecting themselves into the crime scene investigation like that. Stick to the freaking evidence, bro. Stick to what you see, what you hear, what you can videotape, what you can get fingerprints and DNA and all this stuff. Quit trying to solve the crime or put your own theory behind the crime, right?
Is gone as well.
I think I was getting aggravated because I was having some people in this chat that were just being asinine, and they were just putting all kinds of stuff in the chat, and it was like aggravating me because I was trying to present this in a way where I was going against it being a suicide, but people were talking in various ways where they were trying to present in the chat that they thought that it was a suicide and all this and that. So the upsetness of my voice in that is due to that. So I'm just clarifying that for you guys.
Well, and that's all on the record.
Wow.
The bizarre case of Ellen Greenberg, the 27-year-old Philly teacher found dead in her own home, stabbed 20 times, ruled a suicide.
What happened to Ellen? Let me understand something to you, Joe Scott Morgan, professor of forensics, death investigator, and author. Were her fingernail scrapings ever taken? Do we know?
No, not to the best of my knowledge. No. And that's
you have heard.
What did they get at this crime scene? Like, what evidence did they get? It sounds like they just went in there and looked at her and said, "Oh well, she killed herself. Nothing to see here." It's like they didn't do the fingernail to see if there was, an attack going on. They didn't fingerprint a knife. They didn't do any of that. What did they do? That is just crime scene 101, bro.
You've heard bandied about that there were no defensive wounds.
Mm-hmm.
What say you? And also, what do you make of markings on Ellen's neck and multiple bruisings across her body in various stages of healing?
Yeah. And we refer to those in forensic pathology as resolution. And so you've got multiple areas of small bruises, contusions that are in various stages of healing throughout the body. And that's certainly very interesting. And I remember asking Josh and Sandy years ago, I think we had a conversation. I said, did Ellen have a problem walking or a problem with her gait, or is some kind of inner ear problem where she had some kind of problem with balance? She's bouncing off of walls and furniture and all, and they couldn't come up. They said, no, that wasn't the case. So, why would she have? And I even wanted to know if she had some kind of disorder, blood disorder or something. Maybe she's just spontaneously bruising. I have no idea. But none of that.
Well, I can think of an explanation for that. She was a teacher. So, some kids, they run up to you, or they're just a little rough when they're hugging on you, or they're always tugging on you. Or maybe, she got hit by a kid. I mean, I'm looking outside the box. I'm trying to be, also in the beginning of this video, when I played the beginning and the medical examiner were talking about her having bruising and stuff on her, around her lower legs, I was thinking just now, what if that was her trying to, let's say she got knocked to the floor. What if she was kicking back against the attacker, and he was punching her legs out of the way or something? I mean, you just never know. These things are hard to understand sometimes because we're not there. And many times
what looks obvious is really not that obvious, because we're only hearing somebody's perception of what they see and what they assume could have happened, including myself. Objective here. I'm not trying to say one thing or the other, but it could be. It could be. I mean, but maybe there was none of that. All that goes into the investigative process is you try to determine, just like this man is saying, you try to determine what would have caused those bruising. Were they fresh? Were they from a boyfriend? Were they from, working out, a gym injury? Did she fall out of bed? Did she slip in the shower? Because a lot of times people hurt themselves without it being a malicious act. No, I fell on vacation. I fell off there was a pool, and then there was a wooden step thing. Well, I wasn't paying attention, and I stepped down, and I face planted. Had I bruised, would that mean somebody was beating me? No.
None of that could be proved.
Back to the markings on her neck. Weigh in.
Yeah, when we're talking about markings on the neck, Nancy, that's something that is so crucial relative to their current status at autopsy, relative to how fresh they are. Are they going through resolution at this point in time? And I think that it's very important in this case, because the neck on anyone that is being stabbed is a point of contact where a perpetrator would place their hands on somebody's neck. It's a point of control in order to drive a blade into somebody's body. That has to be examined very, very carefully.
To Sandy Greenberg, what do you make of the fact that no luminol was ever used at the scene? The scene was cleaned by professional cleaners.
Thank you, Nancy.
Her fingernails were never scraped. And I firmly believe that there is evidence her body was moved before police or first responders got there.
I'm horrified that she was treated so poorly, and I'm embarrassed for the Philadelphia Police Department. They wouldn't do that to if any of their children were in this situation. They wouldn't be treated like this. She paid taxes, and she deserves the same justice and the same attention that everyone else gets.
Exactly.
Or should get.
Exactly.
I'm just very curious. John Lucy joining us, journalist, Penn Live, and the Patriot News of Harrisburg. Why her fingernails were never removed to see if she scratched anyone. How, with a straight face, a medical examiner how could he state she had 3 potentially fatal stabs and kept stabbing herself? After that, those debilitating stabs, how she stabbed herself in the spine, nicking the dura, and kept going, how she got stabs on the very top of her head, virtually impossible. No luminol was done, and very, very significant, John Lucy, there was dried blood going horizontally across her face, dried that way. Yet she was found by first responders sitting up, slumped up vertically against the kitchen cabinets. The blood should have been going down, not across. That indicates staging. John Lucy.
Well, we call that the wrong way blood, and it's one of the many anomalies at the crime scene that was treated as a suicide scene the night of her death, and thus never preserved and never processed. That is the original sin of the.
So she was found slumped over with the knife in her chest. So in theory, you would think that all the blood would be being pulled by gravity toward a downward trajectory. And that's only common sense. But it seems like these police departments, either they they're so rushed to get all as little evidence as possible, or they're just lazy. They just are incompetent. They've outlived their ability to do their job thoroughly, or they just don't care. Who knows? Because a lot of police departments are understaffed, and that's no excuse to not do your job. Because there's multiple areas in the police department of various, there's forensic, there's CSI, there's all of these areas that investigate a crime. So it's just not one area that investigates the whole crime like you see in the movie, So what kept them from doing their job? And then they lose paperwork, they lose evidence, they lose. Where's the chain of custody forms? Where are the chain of custody forms to show that you even collected this evidence? Where is all this information that's needed whenever you investigate a crime scene? Where is it? They need to start holding these police departments or whoever investigates these things accountable.
This whole case, and that's why this case, even if it goes.
So look at this area right here. It said she was found against this, slumped over. Okay, was it right here in the corner? Because logic says that if she was bleeding out, this would be where most of the blood would be. Was she trying to get up right here? Was this her head rubbing against this area, being pushed backwards, held down while she was being stabbed? Because that looks like a smear. Like if she had a gash on her head or in the back of her neck, like they say, it's only logical to think that somebody would be holding you against that, to hold you still, to stab you, or holding your neck against that to stab you. Because no matter what people think or believe, we are fighters, and we're built to not give in so easily when there's something that is trying to kill us. That's just human nature. We're not built to just succumb to whatever comes our way. That's why they're saying there was no defense wounds. But still, there's a reason for that. And maybe she was already the stab or the stab or the slice to the spine. Maybe that cut the nerve to her arm so she couldn't fight back. You just never know. Maybe the stab to the chest or to the abdomen, maybe it sliced a nerve or a vasta nerve that kept her from fighting. A stab to the chest. If you are sliced or stabbed in this area, what usually happens is your arm goes limp. And I've discussed this in other videos with another case. Or if you're even sliced, that instantly makes your arm lunge forward. It's kind of like the rubber band effect. You're sliced because these muscles and tendons are so tight, it makes your arm go extended rather than like this.
Goes to the PA Supreme Court and is ruled that they can be reinvestigated as a homicide, likely never ends in a perpetrator being identified, because with the way that scene was handled, all that evidence was erased. As for that dura and that the spinal cord specimen, that was preserved from the original autopsy, but it was never fully sectioned and photographed until many years later, after the Greenbergs kept up their own investigation. And Bellino finally turned that dura over to another assistant ME. She processed it, she investigated it, and she's the first one to put on the record in a sworn deposition that the spinal cord wound had no bleeding associated with it, meaning it was a post-mortem wound. And that is all on the record in the sworn depositions that the Greenbergs have secured as part of their lawsuits.
The body of Ellen Greenberg is transported to the medical examiner's office with the knife still lodged in her chest. Dr. Marlon Osborne discovers Ellen has been stabbed 20 times in the chest, neck, and head. 10 of the stab wounds are to her back and neck. 8 of the stab wounds are to her chest. Dr. Osborne notes that the knife embedded in her left chest is through her clothing. Ellen Greenberg is wearing 2 shirts when she is stabbed, and the defects in the shirts are consistent with the underlying wounds.
And more significantly, listen.
Performing the autopsy on Ellen Greenberg, Dr. Marlon Osborne notes that beyond the stabs to the back and the neck area, Ellen also has a 2-inch stab wound to her stomach and a 2.5-inch long gash across her scalp. Ellen also has 11 bruises all over her body, her right arm, leg, and abdomen that are all in various stages of healing. Dr. Marlon Osborne rules Ellen Greenberg's death a homicide.
I don't understand so many aspects of this case, but Sandy and Josh Greenberg breaking their silence now. How could Ellen, who is right-handed, stab herself repeatedly in her right arm? How? How do you, with your right hand, stab yourself in your right arm? And who can keep stabbing themselves after 3 fatal stab wounds?
The whole thing is just I can't say it on the air, but it is just a big mess. It doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. The fact is 2 knives makes no sense. The fact that the way the wounds are make no sense. The fact she has a brutal wound on the top of her head makes no sense.
Sandy, why is it so important, as you've stated in the past, to clear Ellen's name? She's already lost her life. Why is it important to you that her death be fully investigated?
It's wrong. And for me, I need to be able to lay my head on my pillow at night and know that I did everything I needed to do. And this is very important to me.
Why?
Of course it is. My heart goes out to you. My heart goes out to this family. Yeah, she said that there was 2 knives. 2 knives. Well, I'm not too familiar with the case either, but maybe we can talk about criminology and the aspect of investigation and things of that nature if you're down. All right, just let me know. But my heart goes out to this family. Like, they do deserve justice. They do deserve to know what went on. As in everybody's families who are affected by any kind of loss. They don't need to be jerked around and told one thing and then just say, oh no, it wasn't this, it was that. There's too much going on and too much being hidden from these families. It makes you skeptical to even call the police. I guess that's why people don't call the police first off. They call their family, they call their friends, or they call whoever, and then they call the police. You know, it's just weird to me. You know, it's just strange to me. But then they're the first ones that are attacked or they're left in the cold because the investigators don't want to tell them the truth. What keeps these law enforcement agencies, not all of them, but just like bad cops, what keeps these bad agencies from telling the parents the truth? A, we didn't investigate it thoroughly. B, we have incompetence in our police department. C, we don't know what happened. Because like I said last night, 50% of all murders are unsolved. So when people think that, you know, a murder is instantly solved or people or the police department is going to take preference to your case versus another, these parents and these people have to keep on them. This was 11 years in the making before they were even granted all this information that they've been granted. 11 years after their daughter has died and been buried. You know, they had to fight to be heard. That's terrible. In America? Really?
Do you believe, Sandy, that anyone would want to cover up the true nature of Ellen's murder?
When we were being deposed by the city for the lawsuit, I had 5 different attorneys questioning me and insisting, trying to put words in my mouth and insisting upon this being a suicide, which it clearly wasn't. I was just so, professionally speaking, I would be so ashamed of myself if I were them.
But why? My question is, why would anyone do this?
There are 2 reasons. A, the police did a lousy investigation. B, someone's being protected. I can't think of any other reasons.
We wait and we pray that justice will unfold in the murder of Ellen Greenberg. We stop now and we remember American hero Detective Sergeant Mason Griffith, just 34, shot and killed in the line of duty. He is survived by a grieving wife, Jennifer, and sons, Trevor and Jason, sentenced to life without their father. American hero Detective Sergeant Mason Griffith. Thank you to all of our guests, especially to Josh and Sandy Greenberg, my friends. But thank you to you for being with us and to our new MSM family as we...
Okay, Nancy, thank you. Thank you for covering this. And I know it's been a while that you covered this. Let me see how long ago this was. When I did this, it says 3 days ago. Okay, here's the highlight of it. It says, at 27 years old, she and longtime boyfriend Sam Goldberg have just sent out save the date cards for their upcoming wedding. A blizzard is beating down on Philadelphia and school is dismissed early. Sam Goldberg leaves Ellen at home around 4:45 p.m. to work out in the apartment complex gym. When Sam arrived back less than an hour later, the door is locked from the inside. For more than 20 minutes, Sam pounds on the door, texts and calls Ellen, but she doesn't reply. He breaks down the door at 6:33. He finds Ellen on the floor of the kitchen, stabbed 20 times in the chest, the neck, and head. As he is on the phone with 911, they ask him to perform CPR, and he tells them there's a knife still stuck in her chest. First responders arrive within minutes, and Ellen is pronounced dead at 6:40 p.m. Initially, the medical examiner declares Ellen's death as a homicide, but later, after meeting with police, the finding is changed to suicide. Since the medical examiner changed the manner of death from homicide to suicide without any explanation, Ellen Greenberg's parents, Josh and Sandy Greenberg, have fought to have the ruling changed. Josh and Sandy Greenberg filed a lawsuit against the city of Philadelphia, seeking to have the manner of Ellen's death changed back to homicide, or at least undetermined. But the suit grinds to a halt when the Commonwealth Court ruled against Josh and Sandy Greenberg. In the ruling, the judges acknowledged that the investigation of Ellen Greenberg's death was a deeply flawed investigation by the Philadelphia police, the district attorney's office, and the medical examiner's office. But none of that matters because the court said Josh and Sandy Greenberg don't have standing in the case. Attorney Joseph Pedraza says they will take the case to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court will now hear the Greenberg case, saying it will consider whether executors and administrators of an estate have standing to challenge an enormous finding recorded on the descendant. I agree with you, PKC. They should have been fired. There's no way that was a suicide. No way that was a suicide. Death certificate where the finding can constitute the bar or material impotent to recovery of the victim's compensation, restitution, or from the wrongful death, as well as the private criminal complaints. Let me play another video for you guys. I hope that you're enjoying what I'm presenting so far. If you are, please hit the like button or the unlike button if for whatever reason you're not enjoying it. And thank you so much with the chat for being with your questions and everything that you've been stating in the chat. I appreciate you guys being able to keep it flowing. I always like to see that. So based on what I just read, what do you think, guys? What do you think? Let me put some of these chats up here. For every one of you, there's an opposing voice. Use your words wisely in arguing your cases. Got it terrifying for real. 20 minutes, yes. No. Murder. Hey, Joe, thank you for being here this morning. Always a pleasure. Cough. Doesn't mean it was law just because he said so. She was executed. Freudian slip. I couldn't even imagine that happening in the manner being ruled this way. Exactly. So they changed it. So murder was their first suspicion. That would suggest an investigation to change their mind, but they didn't investigate anything. Very, very true, Scott. Very true. I've been following this case, so I appreciate the coverage. No problem. Thank Rondi. She's the one that turned me on to this case. I didn't even realize it existed. I could imagine it, but it's just impossible. You're right. And, they even found that the police were negligent. The medical examiner was negligent. So when are we going to start holding these people accountable due to their negligence? Is it just because the person is deceased, so therefore they're trying to not have to pay compensation due to their negligence? They need to be held accountable.
And they're hopeful they might be getting closer to it. More on that shortly. But first, I want to start at the very beginning. Ellen was just 27 years old when she was found stabbed to death in her apartment that she shared with her fiance. It was January 26th of 2011. Her fiance, Sam Goldberg, called 911.
I need a everything now. I just walked into my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come help now.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is it the house or apartment?
Oh no! Oh no! It's an apartment.
What apartment number?
Please.
She's bleeding from.
I don't know. I can't tell.
So you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie.
Goldberg had been working out at the gym in their building, and he explained what he found when he returned to their apartment.
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
An autopsy report showed that Ellen had been stabbed.
Okay. And the other one, it said 20 minutes. Right there, he said a half hour. Did he not? Did he not say a half hour? And what I read said 20 minutes. There could be a description of, God, I can't talk today or any day. Good Lord. Discrepancy, bro. There's a discrepancy. I can't think either. There's a discrepancy in the time frame. So that in itself, that came from his own mouth.
Stabbed 20 times. Ellen suffered 10 stab wounds to her neck, going back to front, and others to her chest and abdomen. The steak knife from her own kitchen was found in her heart. Ellen's death had initially been ruled a homicide, but then The medical examiner changed that finding to suicide. That seems curious and has raised a lot of questions. How on earth would someone stab themselves in the back of the neck 10 times? Ellen's parents have never felt they have gotten the truth about Ellen's death. They've been fighting since 2011 for answers about what happened to their only daughter, even contacting experts like the late renowned forensic pathologist, Dr. Cyril Wecht, who reviewed the information and wrote that it was his professional opinion that Ellen's manner of death is strongly suspicious of homicide. Other experts have agreed, including neuropathologist Wayne Ross, who wrote, pathologist Dr. Cyril Wecht, the medical examiner changed that finding to suicide. That seems curious and has raised a lot of questions. How on earth would someone stab themselves in the back of the neck 10 times? Ellen's parents have never felt they have gotten the truth about Ellen's death. They've been fighting since 2011 for answers about what happened to their only daughter, even contacting experts like the late renowned forensic pathologist, Dr. Cyril Wecht, who reviewed the information and wrote that it was his professional.
Okay, let's read what he says. It said the multiple stab wounds to the back of the upper neck and lower head found in autopsy were unlikely suicidal stab wounds, especially the different directions, the K, L, Q, R, and S with vertical direction left to right, straight vertical, M, N, and T. So these are based on, the little paperwork that has the body and it has little alphabet codes. That's what he's talking about. So this would be A, B, C, all that. And the right to left horizontal O and vertical P. The locations of the stab wounds high up to the back of the neck and lower back of the head are also unlikely for self-inflicted wounds. A suicide victim will frequently leave a note. There was none. There was also no indication that the descendant was suicidal from the standpoint of her own family, friends, professional associates, and the psychiatrist who had evaluated her. There had not been any indication that she had intention to commit suicide or was depressed during the day she was found dead. She seemed her usual self in the morning when she had a telephone conversation with her mother and later in midday during the texting with a friend at approximately noon. It would be important to find out from the fiance how she behaved barely half an hour before when he left the apartment, as he claimed.
Professional opinion that Ellen's manner of death is strongly suspicious of homicide. Other experts have agreed, including neuropathologist Wayne Ross, who wrote, there are multiple bruises over the body, some of which were fresh, many of which were older.
Okay, after review of the information, it is my opinion that the degree of medical certainty there was evidence of a stab wound which penetrated the cranial cavity and severed the cranial nerves of the brain, right here. As a result, she would experience severe pain, cranial nerve dysfunction, and traumatic brain signs and symptoms, including numbness, tingling, irregular heartbeat, and bradycardia, respiratory depression, neurogenic shock, and impaired loss of consciousness. So that one right there in itself would have just taken her out because she couldn't have functioned after that. There was evidence of strangulation. There was a mark over the front of the neck, which was consistent with a fingernail mark. There were multiple bruises under the neck and in the strap muscles over the right side of her neck. These patterns were compatible with a manual strangulation. See, we didn't hear about this in the last one. There were multiple bruises over the body, some of which were fresh, many of which were older. The patterns were consistent with a repeated beating. The scene findings were indicative of a homicide. Should further information become available, we reserve the right to amend the report at the time. So, come on, bro. Come on. There was evidence of strangulation. How do you strangle yourself and stab yourself at the same time? How did that happen?
The patterns were consistent with a repeated beating, and the scene findings were indicative
This guy.
of a homicide. In 2018, the attorney for Ellen's parents became the district attorney in Philadelphia County, so they asked him to review the case. But there was obviously a conflict, so he asked then Attorney General Josh Shapiro to review the case. In 2019, a spokesperson for the AG's office wrote to a reporter, "We conducted our own thorough investigation to determine a manner of death, interviewing the chief medical examiner of Philadelphia and the medical examiner who performed the autopsy, meeting with the family's representatives, and reviewing information they provided to our attorneys, among other steps." The AG's spokesperson also wrote that they had uncovered other evidence during the review. That included web searches from Ellen's computer that included methods of committing suicide, quick death, and depression in the week.
Okay. It said, following the initial 2011 investigation carried out by the Philadelphia Police Department, our office received a case in 2018 on a conflict referral from the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. We conducted our own thorough investigation to determine the manner of death, interviewing the chief medical examiner of Philadelphia and the medical examiner who performed the autopsy, meeting with the family's representatives and reviewing information they provided to our attorneys, among other steps. Among the additional evidence we reviewed were web searches for methods of committing suicide, quick death, and depression done on Ms. Greenberg's personal computer in the week before her death, and text messages between Ms. Greenberg and a family member on the day of her death, showing the descendant in serious mental distress. Our office has concluded the evidence support that it's a manner of death. Accordingly, we have communicated our finding to the family and the representatives. We have closed the investigation. Come on. Glitter sent this to me. I'm gonna put it up on the screen, and we're gonna go over it right quick, and then we'll get back to the video. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. If you are still with me, press the number 1 if you're enjoying the presentation. Press the number 2 if you're undecided. I think this is interesting, especially with all the information that we're going over. I like doing it like this because it is factual. It's not just speculatory. You know what I mean? Oh, no, we don't know. And that's what makes it so interesting to me, is it's not based on speculatory situations. Oh, me too, 12. Keep it going. So it says on 126. Let me see. Can y'all see that pretty good? No, not at all. Make it bigger. Okay, it says that at 126:11 in 1931, Detective Sierra 9103 of Homicide called to report the death of the above descendant found in her apartment with a knife in her chest. At the scene, I arrived at the scene at 2027 and was met by 5th District Police, Snipes 6358 and Young 6960 holding the log. Sergeant Ferguson, Detective Veal, and Detective Revel, and assigned DC 11-5001577, Homicide Sierra 9103, and Peters 851 arrived a short time later. The descendant's fiance, Samuel Goldberg, along with his family and some friends, were also present. The background: the descendant's fiance, Samuel Goldberg, reportedly left the descendant at the apartment around 1645 to go to the gym. He returned around 1715 to 1730 and was unable to get into the apartment. He opened the door with his keys, but the door was secure from the inside. He proceeded to try and contacted the descendant via text messages, telephone calls, and emails for approximately an hour before he forced entry into the apartment. An apartment security man was reportedly present during the entry, so there was somebody with him. He immediately discovered her and called 911. Radio time is at 1833. He would briefly. The older you are, the older me is the one in the tank top. The real me is the one in the blue shirt, the one that's talking right now. I know it gets confusing, but you know. Also, while we're talking about this, you know, if he's able to push that door open enough and see his girlfriend on the floor for an hour, he's going to be calling her name and she's not moving. Don't you think that he would have called 911 or somebody to come help him get into the residence? That just doesn't make sense to me. All this wrote in black and white. I hope you're listening to what I'm saying. I mean, I know I get on my own nerves listening to my own voice, but what I'm reading here, he sat there for an hour before he did something. It just doesn't make sense at all. It's just tragic in so many ways. He was instructed to start CPR until he noticed a knife in her chest. Then he was instructed to stop. PFD medic responded and pronounced death at 1840. The body in the vicinity. The location of death is in the kitchen of the descendant's apartment located at the Venice Loft Apartments, 4601 Flat Rock Road, Unit 603, Philadelphia, PA. It is a two-bedroom apartment on the 6th floor of the building shared by the descendant with her fiancé, Samuel Goldberg. The apartment is well kept clean. The inside lock to the front door, the common latch solid bar door guard, is broken with the screws on the door loose, obviously forced in when a locked position. Throughout the entire apartment, there is no evidence of a struggle. Furniture and items appear in place. Nothing is obviously missing or disturbed. There is numerous valuables present: money, keys, three laptop computers, one in the kitchen on the island appeared to be Goldberg's. One in the master bedroom suite on the floor appeared to be the descendant, as evidenced by wedding material, and one on the additional bedroom desk appeared to be the descendant's work computer, as evidenced by numerous teaching material. The descendant is a teacher. There is no note found or anything indicative of suicide on the computers or in the rest of the apartment. The only way to exit the apartment with the front doorway locked is through a rear slider leading to a patio. The patio is 6 stories high. There is snow present with no tracks or footprints, completely undisturbed. Okay, so the only way out was that patio, and it's 6 foot high. No tracks or disturbances in the snow. So I guess there's the answer to your question, Texas. I mean, I still think that, 6 foot, you could jump that easily. That's not too far up. Don't you think? I would think not. I mean, but no disturbances in snow. The ambient temperature is inside the apartment, reads 69 degrees Fahrenheit on a thermostat. The incident occurred during a winter snowstorm. Prescription medications are recovered from a bedstand located in the master bedroom. Prescriber Dr. Ellen Berman, alprazolam, clonazepam, and zolpidem. A paper booklet is the descendant's pocketbook that's on a chair in the living room island, resembles a journal of her medication and her state of mind while taking, last dated 1/16. The descendant's cell phone is in the master bedroom. I mean, I think even though we're going all over this case to kind of get refreshed on it and stuff, the fact of the matter is a woman lost her life. A woman lost her life, and still to this day, there's not been anybody responsible for it. They did no fingerprinting of the bathroom, no fingerprinting of any other area in the apartment. They didn't fingerprint the knife. I don't know if they did DNA on the knife or not, but as Nancy said, they didn't fingerprint the knife. They didn't do any of this. A lot of negligence. And who would have wanted this school teacher dead? She was a school teacher. Who would have wanted her dead? Did somebody kill her, then go down to the gym and say, okay, the deed done, walk out the front door? The boyfriend came up. Everything, he said took place. I mean, it's just very shady. The review of her call and messages log reveals. So these medications, best of my understanding, would be for anxiety or possibly depression, but I'm not certain. I have to go and review them. But the alprazolam, the first one, I would say it would be for anxiety. What do y'all think? What do y'all think so far? Yeah, I agree. So they're all negative. Okay. Last outgoing call was a number blank 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 on 12611 at 1433, duration 30 seconds. Last missed call was to a program. Good question, PKC. I'm going to read this because I'm getting annoyed at my voice. Last outgoing call was to a number on 12611 at 1433, duration 30 seconds. Last missed call was to a programmed additional missed calls from a program Sam Goldberg on 12611 between 1730 and 1742 and programmed. Venice Loft 11611 between 1807 and 1810. So he called her and then the Loft called her. Last outgoing texter programmed on 11611 at 1547. Wonder what that text was about. I think it was the one to the mother. Last incoming text and email from a program Sam Goldberg on 12611 between 1732 and 1754. Hello, open the door. What are you doing? I'm getting pissed. Hello, you better have an excuse. What the fuck? Ah, you have no idea. Wow. So what do y'all think about that? Do you think those are emails of a concerned boyfriend? No personal effects on the body. Upon further examination of the body, the decedent has a knife embedded in her left chest through her clothing. There are multiple stab wounds examined at the scene at the chest where the knife is located, a few superficial grouped nearby, one to the left upper chest near the clavicle, two more at the mid-chest between just below her breast. There are defects to the shirt consistent with an underlying wound. There are no defense injuries to the hands, wrists, or forearms. The right hand is closed in a loose fist. Post-mortem findings at arrival of 2027 and 2155 are the same. The body is mostly flaccid, meaning it has no definition. The hands appear to be slightly stiff. The body is cool to the touch at the extremities and warm to the touch of the torso. Okay, guys, we're 2 hours into this, and this whole live is 5 hours. It has a lot of information. I think I'm going to break this down into two because honestly, I get tired of hearing my own voice. I don't know why that annoys me so much, but it really does. I mean, some of the other lives that I watch, I'm just like, oh, stop talking already. Just talk too much. Anyways, tell me really quickly what y'all think about this case, the update that I did in the very beginning. If you haven't watched those, possibly go back and watch them. This case is very intriguing. If you don't know anything about it, I do get to the meat and potatoes of the case toward the end. I know Jennifer Coffenduffer doing one today as well over to Greenberg. And by coincidence, we're both doing one today. Why don't you go check her out? Give her page a like. Give her a subscription if you aren't already a subscriber. This case is very intriguing to say the least, and there's a lot of time that's gone by that it went from a suicide to a homicide to a suicide. Now it's been reversed back to a homicide. So I will try to get back more later on or possibly tomorrow, finish it up. That way I can go watch Jennifer and see her professional insight on this and possibly even add it to mine. You know, because, you know, she had a lot of great insight on cases, obviously. So be looking out, set your notifications for lives coming up. I thank you guys who stopped in to give the show a like, comments, and that. I really appreciate it. Gonna go work out and be back later.
You guys have an awesome day. Maestro, cue that music.
No call.
Warning, Neo detected. Warning, Neo detected.